It started like a scene from an ordinary life. A chance encounter on a deserted road. A broken-down car. A helping hand extended in the spirit of old friendship. Ethan Thompson, a wealthy and powerful man, found himself stranded, vulnerable in a way he wasn't accustomed to. And then, by pure coincidence, or perhaps fate, he crossed paths with Lucas Brooks, a man he hadn't seen in years. Lucas, a humble mechanic scraping by, offered Ethan the help he needed that day. This moment should have been the rekindling of an unbreakable bond, a testament to the strength of shared history and goodwill. Instead, it marked the beginning of a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. Ethan was a man who seemed to have it all: money, influence, and a life others envied. Lucas was a man of simple dreams, a quiet resilience forged by struggle. But what happens when two men with such different lives collide? And what happens when the lines between friendship, loyalty, and ambition blur beyond recognition? Today, we'll uncover the story of how this unlikely reunion turned into a nightmare, how jealousy and deception tore apart a lifelong connection, and how love became a weapon that would leave no one unscathed. By the end of this story, 2 lives will be lost. One will pay the ultimate price for betrayal, and the other will lose everything in a moment of unimaginable rage. This is the story of trust broken, lives destroyed, and the terrible consequences of a single act of revenge. Ethan Thompson was the kind of man most people admired from a distance. With his vast wealth, sharp suits, and an aura of authority, he seemed untouchable. But beneath the polished surface, there was more to Ethan than met the eye: layers of pride, ambition, and an ego that demanded constant validation. Lucas Brooks, on the other hand, was his complete opposite. He lived a modest life, running a small business selling motorbike parts, barely managing to make ends meet. Lucas wasn't a man of grand ambitions. His only dream was to work hard, marry the woman he loved, and build a stable future. Despite their differences, Lucas and Ethan shared a bond forged in childhood, a time when money and status didn't matter. Years passed, and life pulled them in different directions. While Ethan climbed the ladder of success, Lucas faced the harsh realities of survival. They hadn't seen each other in years until one fateful evening changed everything. It happened on a lonely stretch of road, where Ethan's luxury car broke down. Frustrated and helpless, Ethan stood by the roadside, unable to fix the problem himself. That's when fate intervened. An old, rusted car pulled up, and out stepped Lucas Brooks. The recognition was instant: 2 childhood friends brought together by chance, or perhaps by destiny. Lucas, always willing to lend a hand, didn't hesitate to help Ethan. He called a local mechanic and stayed with him until the problem was resolved. Ethan, though grateful, couldn't help but notice how much life had changed for Lucas. The man who once shared his childhood joys and struggles was now living a life Ethan couldn't imagine for himself, one of hardship and sacrifice. Moved by the reunion, or perhaps out of pity, Ethan made an offer that would alter the course of their lives. He invited Lucas to work for him as a chef and maid in his grand mansion, promising a salary that would far exceed anything Lucas had ever earned. For Lucas, it was an opportunity to escape the grind of his small business and provide for his future. For Ethan, it was a way to keep his old friend close, though the reasons behind this gesture weren't as selfless as they seemed. The lives of these 2 men couldn't have been more different. Ethan lived in opulence, his mansion filled with luxury and power, while Lucas remained humble, his loyalty and gratitude binding him to his new role in Ethan's household. Despite the vast difference in their circumstances, their reunion seemed to rekindle the bond they once shared, or so it appeared. For Lucas Brooks, working for Ethan Thompson was more than just a job, it was a lifeline. The salary Ethan provided allowed him to dream of a better future, not just for himself but for the woman he loved, Ava Morales. Lucas's loyalty to his boss was unwavering, almost to a fault. Time and time again, Lucas went above and beyond his duties, sacrificing his own safety and well-being to protect Ethan from trouble. There was the time when Ethan's careless decisions landed him in legal trouble, and Lucas took the blame, spending time in jail to shield his employer. Then there were the robberies, thieves targeting Ethan's wealth. Lucas put himself in harm's way to defend Ethan's property, even when it meant risking his own life. Each act of loyalty only deepened Lucas's bond with Ethan, though Ethan himself viewed these sacrifices with a sense of entitlement rather than gratitude. Lucas, however, believed in the strength of their friendship. To him, Ethan wasn't just a boss, he was a friend who had extended a helping hand during a difficult time. Lucas's faith in Ethan blinded him to the cracks in their relationship, cracks that were becoming wider with every passing day. The real shift began when Ava Morales entered the picture. Ava was the most beautiful woman in town, her charm and elegance capturing the attention of everyone she met. Lucas had won her heart, and their love story was one of hope and resilience, a stark contrast to the bitterness that began brewing in Ethan's heart. Ethan, despite his wealth and power, couldn't stand the idea of Lucas having something he couldn't. Ava's beauty and grace mesmerized Ethan, and her relationship with Lucas awakened a jealousy that he couldn't contain. To Ethan, Ava represented something he thought he deserved, and the fact that Lucas, his loyal servant, had won her affections only added fuel to the fire. As Lucas and Ava's relationship grew stronger, Ethan's resentment deepened. When Lucas confided in Ethan about his plans to marry Ava, it was meant to be a moment of celebration between friends. Lucas even asked Ethan for financial help to start a welding business, a dream he had been nurturing for years. With the wedding on the horizon, Lucas wanted to provide Ava with the life she deserved, free from struggle and uncertainty. But behind Lucas's words of hope and gratitude, Ethan's mind was already racing. The idea of Lucas achieving happiness, of marrying Ava and building a life with her, was intolerable to him. Ethan smiled and nodded, promising to help, but inside, he was plotting. As we reflect on this real-life story, subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more daily stories that need to be heard. Hit that subscribe button. And let us hear from you in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's continue. Ethan's wealth had always been his weapon, and he intended to use it now to sabotage Lucas's future. While Lucas dreamed of a life with Ava, Ethan began laying the groundwork for betrayal. He contacted Lucas's friend Alexei under the pretense of ensuring Ava's character was suitable for Lucas. In truth, Ethan was seeking Ava's phone number, a way to wedge himself between Lucas and the woman he loved. This was just the beginning. Ethan's jealousy, disguised as concern, would soon escalate into a series of actions that would not only destroy his friendship with Lucas but set the stage for a tragedy no one could have foreseen. Ethan Thompson's jealousy had now transformed into an obsession to claim Ava Morales and strip Lucas Brooks of everything he held dear. What began as envy now grew into a calculated and cold-blooded plan. Ethan's wealth, his most powerful asset, would be the key to unraveling Lucas's life, piece by piece. It started with a simple yet devious move. Ethan approached Alexei, a mutual acquaintance of both him and Lucas. Pretending to care for Lucas's well-being, Ethan spun a false narrative. He claimed he needed Ava's contact information to ensure she was the right woman for Lucas, a claim that Alexei, unaware of Ethan's true intentions, believed. Reluctantly, Alexei handed over Ava's number, never realizing the Pandora's box he had just opened. With Ava's number in hand, Ethan set his plan into motion. He began texting her, initially under the guise of a caring friend of Lucas, subtly dropping hints about how Lucas was struggling and how he, Ethan, could provide support. Slowly, the messages shifted tone. Ethan began showcasing his wealth, inviting Ava to extravagant dinners and sending her luxurious gifts, a designer handbag one day, a diamond bracelet the next. Each gesture was accompanied by Ethan's smooth assurances that she deserved more than Lucas could ever provide. Meanwhile, Lucas remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind his back. He continued working tirelessly at Ethan's mansion, holding on to the belief that his boss was a friend who would soon help him with the funds he needed for his welding business. But Ethan had no intention of helping Lucas. Instead, he was preparing to sever all ties. One fateful evening, Ethan called Lucas into his opulent living room. Under the dim glow of a crystal chandelier, Ethan delivered the news that would shatter Lucas's world. Lucas was no longer welcome in the house. Ethan accused him of overstepping boundaries, claiming that Lucas's focus on Ava was distracting him from his duties. Without remorse, Ethan took back the car he had gifted Lucas and ordered his gatekeeper never to let Lucas set foot on the property again. Lucas was stunned. He begged Ethan for the funds he had promised, money that would allow him to start his welding business and secure a future with Ava. But Ethan dismissed him coldly, offering no explanation or sympathy. Lucas, now homeless and without transportation, was forced to walk away with nothing but the clothes on his back. For Lucas, the timing couldn't have been worse. With his wedding date fast approaching, he scrambled to find a way to gather the money he needed. He worked tirelessly, taking odd jobs and borrowing from friends, all while trying to shield Ava from the financial strain. But Ava was no longer the woman Lucas once knew. Ethan's lavish attention was working its magic. The constant flow of gifts, the luxury dinners, and Ethan's subtle digs at Lucas's financial struggles began to chip away at Ava's loyalty. She started ignoring Lucas's calls, claiming she was too busy. When they did speak, her tone was distant, her words cold. Lucas, desperate to keep their relationship alive, tried to reassure her, promising that their struggles were temporary. But deep down, he could feel her slipping away. The breaking point came one evening when Lucas visited Ava's apartment. She greeted him with a strained smile, her eyes avoiding his. They sat in silence for minutes that felt like hours before Ava finally spoke. With trembling hands, she returned the engagement ring Lucas had given her. She couldn't go through with the wedding, she explained. She couldn't marry a man who couldn't provide the life she dreamed of. Lucas's pleas fell on deaf ears. Ava had made up her mind. Unbeknownst to Lucas, Ava's decision had been influenced by more than just Ethan's wealth. Ethan had filled her mind with doubts about Lucas's ability to support her, painting himself as the better choice. The final straw came when Ethan gifted Ava a brand new car, a gesture that symbolized the life of luxury she could have if she chose him. Ava, torn between love and financial stability, ultimately let greed guide her decision. For Lucas, the heartbreak was unbearable. He had sacrificed everything, his freedom, his safety, his dignity, for the people he cared about, only to be betrayed by both his best friend and the woman he loved. Standing outside Ava's apartment, clutching the ring she had returned, Lucas realized that the life he had fought so hard to build was now in ruins. Lucas Brooks had always prided himself on his resilience. He was the kind of man who took life's punches on the chin, standing tall no matter how hard the fall. But every man has his limits. Betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation had pushed Lucas to his brink. He had given Ethan Thompson everything: his trust, his loyalty, and his sacrifices. And in return, Ethan had stripped him of his dreams, his love, and his dignity. The breaking point wasn't a single moment. It was a slow descent, a series of wounds that festered until there was nothing left but rage. Lucas didn't give up on Ava right away. In his heart, he believed that if he could just explain what had happened, how Ethan had manipulated her, how much he still loved her, things could go back to the way they were. He tried calling her, but every call went straight to voicemail. His texts remained unanswered, each message he sent met with the cold silence of rejection. One rainy evening, he drove to her apartment. Standing outside her door, drenched to the bone, he knocked repeatedly. When she finally opened the door, her expression was cold, distant, so unlike the woman he had planned to marry. "Lucas, you need to stop this," she said firmly. "It's over. Please, just let me move on." He pleaded with her, his voice breaking as he tried to make her see reason. But Ava didn't budge. "I'm with Ethan now," she said, her words cutting deeper than any knife. When she closed the door, Lucas stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the chipped paint, his mind racing with questions. I do hope you have subscribed already, as it is about to get really interesting. Weeks turned into months, and Lucas found himself spiraling further. Ava and Ethan's relationship became impossible to ignore. Their engagement announcement was the final straw. It was plastered across social media, a professionally shot video showing Ethan proposing to Ava during a luxurious vacation. A private yacht, a sunset backdrop, and a ring so large it glittered even on a screen. Lucas couldn't look away. The comments underneath were filled with congratulations, emojis of hearts and champagne bottles, and comments about how perfect they were together. Lucas's stomach churned with every word. Perfect? No, this wasn't perfect. This was theft. This was betrayal. Even worse, Ethan and Ava made no effort to be discreet. Their lives became a spectacle. Photos of them at high-end restaurants, traveling to exotic locations, shopping for what looked like a fairy-tale wedding. Friends Lucas had once shared with Ethan stopped talking to him entirely, caught up in the orbit of Ethan's wealth and charm. Lucas's once humble and hopeful life now felt like a prison. He spent nights staring at the engagement ring Ava had returned to him, the small diamond now feeling insignificant compared to the one Ethan had given her. He started drinking more, each sip of whiskey burning like the anger inside him. His work as a mechanic suffered. Customers complained about mistakes he never used to make. His boss, a kind man who had always been understanding, started losing patience. "Lucas, you've got to get it together," he said one day. "I don't know what's going on with you, but you're not the same guy you used to be." Lucas wanted to scream, to tell someone, anyone, about what he was going through. But who would believe him? Ethan was rich, powerful, and charismatic. Lucas was just a struggling mechanic whose life was falling apart. Ethan, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving. He and Ava moved in together, their new home a sprawling mansion that looked like it had been pulled from the pages of a magazine. Ethan spared no expense, throwing lavish parties and surrounding himself with people who praised him endlessly. Their wedding plans were no secret, either. Mutual friends gushed about the grandeur of it all, the designer dresses, the 5-tier cake, the venue perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Lucas overheard snippets of conversations everywhere he went, each word like a dagger to his chest. For Ethan, the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a victory lap. He had taken everything Lucas wanted and made it his own. And for Ava, the allure of wealth and security seemed to outweigh any guilt she might have felt. The night Lucas reached his breaking point was quiet, almost peaceful. He sat in his dimly lit apartment, the engagement ring still in his hand. He hadn't eaten all day, and the whiskey bottle on the table was nearly empty. His mind raced with thoughts he could no longer control. He opened his laptop and began searching for pawn shops. The next day, he walked into one and purchased a gun. The transaction was simple, unremarkable. But as Lucas held the weapon in his hands, he felt a shift. For the first time in months, he felt something other than despair. He felt control. Lucas started keeping a journal, pouring his thoughts onto its pages. At first, the entries were disorganized, rambling, an outlet for his anger and pain. But as days passed, they became more focused. He wrote about Ethan's betrayal, Ava's rejection, and the dreams that had been stolen from him. He also wrote about his plan. "They took everything from me," one entry read. "They won't get away with it." The words were underlined, their finality chilling. On the night before Ethan and Ava's wedding, Lucas made a decision. He picked up his phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, Lucas spoke with eerie calmness. "I need to report something," he said. "You'll want to be at the Ethan Thompson estate tomorrow. It's going to be eventful." The operator asked for more details, but Lucas hung up. He sat in silence for a long time, staring at the gun on the table. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for certain: this wasn't just about revenge. This was about justice. As dawn broke over the Thompson estate, a sense of serenity blanketed the sprawling mansion. Guests were arriving in droves, their laughter and chatter echoing through the perfectly manicured gardens. Inside, Ethan Thompson and Ava Morales prepared for the happiest day of their lives. But unbeknownst to them, this day would not end with a celebration, it would end in tragedy. Lucas Brooks sat in his old, battered pickup truck just outside the estate's towering iron gates. The morning sun glared against the windshield, but Lucas didn't flinch. He was focused, his grip tight on the steering wheel. The gun sat on the passenger seat, its cold metal glinting in the light. He had spent the night reading through his journal, reliving every painful memory. He had rehearsed what he would say, how he would make Ethan understand the depth of his betrayal. Now, as he looked at the grand estate that symbolized everything he had lost, there was no turning back. Lucas stepped out of his truck and approached the gate, where a security guard stood watching him warily. "Sir, you're not on the guest list," the guard said, stepping forward to block his path. Lucas's voice was calm but firm. "I need to see Ethan. Now." The guard shook his head. "I'm sorry, but I can't let you in." Without warning, Lucas lunged at the man, his pent-up rage fueling his actions. The struggle was brief but intense. Lucas overpowered the guard, leaving him unconscious on the ground. He grabbed the gate keys from the man's belt and swung the gates open, stepping onto the property. Inside, the wedding preparations were in full swing. Guests sipped champagne as waitstaff flitted about, and a string quartet played softly in the background. Ava, in her wedding dress, stood in front of a mirror, adjusting her veil. Ethan was in the main hall, shaking hands and entertaining guests, basking in the glow of his perfect life. The peace was shattered when Lucas burst through the front doors, his face contorted with a mix of anger and despair. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "Ethan." Lucas's voice boomed through the hall, filled with raw emotion. Ethan turned, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm as he saw Lucas. "What the hell are you doing here?" he demanded, stepping forward. Lucas's hands trembled as he pointed at Ethan, his voice cracking. "You took everything from me. My love, my dreams, my life. I trusted you, Ethan. I went to jail for you. And this is how you repay me." Guests whispered among themselves, some stepping back toward the walls. Ethan raised his hands, trying to calm Lucas down. "Lucas, you need to leave. Let's talk about this later." "Later?" Lucas laughed bitterly. "There is no later. You made sure of that when you destroyed everything I had." Ava appeared at the top of the staircase, her dress billowing behind her. "Lucas, please," she said, her voice trembling. "This isn't you. Just put the gun down." Lucas's gaze shifted to her, his heart aching. "You," he said softly, his voice filled with sorrow. "You were my everything. And you threw it all away, for him?" Ava began descending the staircase slowly, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Lucas." "Stop!" Lucas shouted, his voice echoing. Ava froze mid-step, her face pale with fear. Ethan took a cautious step forward, trying to position himself between Ava and Lucas. "Lucas, think about what you're doing," he said. "This isn't going to fix anything." Lucas shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about fixing anything. It's about making you feel just a fraction of the pain you've caused me." The room held its breath as Lucas raised the gun. In the span of a heartbeat, 2 shots rang out. Ethan fell first, a look of shock frozen on his face as he collapsed to the ground. Ava screamed, her hands clutching her chest as she crumpled beside him. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Lucas stood over the bodies, the gun dangling loosely in his hand. Guests screamed and scrambled to escape, some calling the police, others frozen in shock. When the officers stormed the mansion, they found Lucas standing in the center of the chaos. He didn't resist as they approached him, his face eerily calm. "I did it," he said simply, dropping the gun to the floor. "I'm the one you're looking for." In the cold, unyielding light of a jail cell, Lucas Brooks sat alone, the weight of his actions pressing down on him like a crushing tide. The events of the past days replayed in his mind, a looping film of anguish, betrayal, and regret. The man who had once been defined by loyalty and resilience now bore the label of a killer. And as the world outside debated the motives and morality of his crime, Lucas found himself confronting the deepest truths about his own humanity. During his interrogation, Lucas spoke freely, his voice devoid of anger but filled with sorrow. "I loved them both in different ways," he admitted. "Ethan was my brother, or at least I thought he was. Ava was my future. When they took that from me, it felt like I had nothing left. But I see now that I let my pain turn me into something I never wanted to be. The detective on the other side of the table watched him, torn between pity and professionalism. Lucas continued, I'm not here to deny what I did. I deserve whatever punishment you see fit. As Lucas awaited trial, he penned letters to the families of Ethan and Ava. He wrote about his remorse, his broken heart, and the irreversible nature of his choices. In one letter, he confessed, I can never undo what I've done. But if my story can stop someone else from reaching the same breaking point, then maybe some good can come from all this pain. In his cell, Lucas often stared at the walls, reflecting on his life's trajectory. He thought about the boy who had dreamed of a simple, happy life and wondered how that boy had become this man. The murder of Ethan Thompson and Ava Morales was headline news. The media dissected every detail of their lives, from Ethan's wealth and charisma to Ava's beauty and ambition. Lucas, however, was painted in stark contrasts. Some viewed him as a victim of betrayal pushed too far, while others saw him as a cold-blooded murderer. News anchors debated the morality of his actions. Was Lucas Brooks a man driven to madness by betrayal? One commentator asked. Or was he always capable of such violence, waiting for the right trigger? The small town that had once seen Lucas as a hard-working, kind-hearted man was shaken to its core. Ethan's former employees spoke of his generosity, while others whispered about his arrogance and cruelty. Ava's friends mourned her loss but questioned her decisions. Local pastors and counselors held community meetings to address the trauma left in the wake of the crime. This is a tragedy that speaks to the dangers of unchecked emotions, jealousy, greed, and betrayal, one pastor said during a vigil. Let this serve as a lesson for us all. Through Lucas's story, the film offers a chilling exploration of how betrayal and greed can unravel even the strongest bonds. Ethan's ambition and jealousy led him to exploit the loyalty of a lifelong friend. Ava's decisions, whether driven by materialism or survival, ultimately deepened the rift. Lucas's descent into violence was not born overnight but built over years of suppressed pain and growing resentment. His story is a stark reminder of how unresolved anger can fester, leading to devastating consequences. In the end, the tale of Lucas Brooks, Ethan Thompson, and Ava Morales is not just about the crime itself but about the fragile nature of trust, the perils of greed, and the haunting power of unbridled emotion. Lives were lost, a community was shattered, and a man who once valued loyalty above all now faces a lifetime of regret. It leaves us with one question: how far would you go when faced with betrayal? As we close this tragic chapter, one truth becomes painfully clear: trust is a fragile thread, easily frayed by envy and ambition. The story of Lucas Brooks, Ethan Thompson, and Ava Morales serves as a grim reminder of how betrayal can destroy even the deepest bonds, leaving behind only sorrow and regret. This isn't just a story of crime, it's a story of choices. Ethan's greed, Lucas's unchecked anger, and Ava's shifting loyalties led to devastating consequences. Had they communicated openly, had they chosen to value friendship and love over pride and possession, perhaps this tragedy could have been avoided. Let this serve as a powerful reminder: nurture the bonds you value, confront resentment before it festers, and remember that greed and envy are paths to destruction. What do you think about this case? Was Lucas pushed too far, or was he responsible for letting his emotions spiral out of control? Could Ethan and Ava have made different choices to prevent this outcome? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it with others who love true crime stories, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales that delve deep into the complexities of the human experience. As you reflect on this story, take a moment to consider the relationships in your own life. Are they built on trust, or are there unspoken tensions waiting to surface? Let this tale remind us all to value loyalty, seek understanding, and address conflicts before they escalate into something far worse.